Hello, welcome to my channel Devops with Prasanna. This is day 9 in Learn AWS in 30 Days series. And today we are going to talk about the databases in AWS, particularly the relational database. So this is a very important topic because it's going to cover a lot of nuanced details like multi-AZ, read replicas, encryption at rest. We'll see all those things in a detailed format. Yeah, let's jump in. Yeah. So the first things first, why to have a relational database served using AWS? There are other ways to do it. For example, you can basically create a EC2 instance. This is a virtual machine, and in this EC2 instance, you can very well install the Postgres database, and you can use this EC2 instance to route traffic and all the things like that. Even though this is possible, this is cost effective, there are benefits in using a service called RDS, which is very specific to having a managed relational database in AWS. So what are the benefits which we have? The first one is automatic backup and recovery. For example, it will be as simple as giving a check mark and then saying a daily at night 12 o'clock, please take a backup and put the backup in S3 bucket. So we can do automatic backup, and if we want to restore, we can restore from any of the backups available. Auto scaling of storage. So for example, you are given the storage size as 50 GB, but because the application is writing a lot of data to database, your storage size got full, which means first you have to set up an alarm here, and then you have to go and manually increase the storage capacity. But in case of RDS, all these things will be taken care of by RDS itself. Next one, we'll easily get the monitoring dashboard. For example, monitoring will say how many number of connections are currently connected to the database. What is the database load? What is the CPU load? All those things can be easily obtained by using the managed database service. This means it has a very good integration with CloudWatch, and we can get all the metrics in the CloudWatch. Next one is logging. So all the database logs will be sent to the CloudWatch again, and we can view it in a centralized location. Multi-AZ support. So these are the critical things, and we are going to discuss multi-AZ, read replica, encryption at rest in a detailed way later. Multi-AZ means, for example, instead of relying on one database in one availability zone, we'll have a standby database in a different AZ. So even if something happens to this AZ or to this database instance, then the standby will come into play. Yeah, again, we'll look at it in detail. But if we want to set this up for our EC2 instance, it will be really a tough job to do. And read replicas. Whenever the read load increases, we can redirect the read loads alone to a different instance. So that is read replica. And encryption at rest. This is for the compliance and security purpose. So all these things are possible in the managed version of database. Again, the managed version of database is called AWS RDS. This is the service name. And this gives a lot of flexibility at a slightly higher price point. So that's something which you have to keep in mind. But the one more downside to RDS is we won't get SSH access into the wherever the database is running. So we'll get only the monitoring, logging. We'll get all those things, but we won't get the direct SSH access. So we can't go and see the instance which is running the database, okay? Because it's a managed service. Yeah, before going into some of the detailed concepts, we'll quickly see the terminologies. So this is again a generic one, but I want to make sure we are all on the same page. So database instance. This is an actual database server. For example, when you're going to RDS, you will say create a database instance. Okay. So here you will specify what is the instance type you are going to use and all those things. It could be bigger machine, smaller machine, in which subnet you are going to use, in which VPC you are going to create, what is the security group. All these things will be specified in this database instance. Okay, this is a server which is hosting all the databases. Next thing is database engine. Engine is nothing but like what is the type of database you are going to use, whether you are going to use Postgres, whether you are going to use MySQL, SQL Server, whatever it is. So this is the database engine. The third one is the database, which you can create by connecting to the database instance. So you'll connect to database instance, you'll go into the database, you'll go into that server, and then you'll start creating the databases. So one database instance can have multiple databases there. Cool. So again, like we'll see all these things practically. Yeah. Now we'll come to the first concept which I want to discuss, which is read replicas. So like this read replicas, multi-AZ, availability, all these things are asked in many of the interviews. It is very, very easy to create a database in RDS. Okay. But the catch is like how you understand these concepts makes a lot of difference. Okay. So read replicas. Let's say like you have one application and it's writing to one database. Okay, let's take a very simple case. So this is how things work. And there are a lot of mechanisms to scale the applications because the application is stateless now. Stateless in the sense there is no data being stored inside the application. Okay, all the data is stored in the database only. Cool. So we can easily scale the application with the usage of Kubernetes and things like that. Auto scaling is like really easy. Let's say like you scale this application from one application to 10 applications. Okay, so there are like 10 application servers writing data to your database. Okay, so the bottleneck obviously will be the database. Eventually, like over the period of time, the bottleneck will be here in this database. For example, you have 10 application servers. Next, you have like 50 application servers. Then it's auto scaling to 100 application servers. You should know about like how to manage the load in the database side also. For example, you can set up something like read replicas. This is nothing but another instance of RDS running in it could be like in the same AZ or in a different AZ. Usually different AZ is a proper approach because it gives a high availability as well. So let's say like we are running this different RDS instance in a different AZ. Okay, RDS will take care of syncing the data. For example, you are writing to this database, you are doing some insert query and creating a new record. RDS will do a async replication to this database and to this database also. So these two databases will get a copy of this whatever data change which you are making, data change or data insertion which you are doing. And this can act like a read-only system. So for example, all the read queries can be forwarded to this read replica and that can serve the request, which means your load on the main database, this is called as main database, these two called as read replicas. The load on the main database will be less, which will make sure like the CPU load is less, the number of DB connections is less, which means your database can handle the load properly. So that is the idea. Cool. I think like this is like one important concept which you have to understand, which is the read replicas. We'll go into the second concept, which is called as high availability. This also follows a similar kind of pattern. Okay, so there is an application which is writing to a database, which is a main database, and to make sure the system, like the database is highly available, we will create a copy of this database in a different availability zone. Okay, let's say like this is in AP South 1A, and there will be like a standby database in AP South 1B. Okay. And all the data will be synced from here to here in an asynchronous fashion. Okay. And what this means is there is one connection URL. So we are going to see like what is that connection URL is. And whenever there is some issue with this AZ or some issue with this database, primary database, RDS will switch this connection URL from here to here. So it will do automatically for us based on the health check. So by this way, like we'll ensure like database is highly available. So this is one more concept which you have to know. So how to make your database highly available. Okay, cool. So when creating the RDS instance, we'll have the option whether it should be like a read replica only, or it should be like a standby database. So just to give you like what is the terminology used in RDS, this one is called as multi-AZ cluster. Okay, so if you choose the option as multi-AZ cluster, then this is a setup which you are going to get, and this will be like multi-AZ instance. So the previous example, it is forming a cluster, so it can serve the read request as well. But in this case, it's only one instance which is going to serve your application. Even if the load is high, it will not going to go and change it to a new standby database. Only when the primary database fails, then that is the time when the connection switch will happen, and only the standby database will become a primary database. There will be like no other database to serve your request. Okay, because it's a multi-AZ instance, and in multi-AZ cluster there are like multiple databases to serve your request. Cool. The third one is encryption at rest. Okay, so this is one security concept which you have to understand, and this is like used for compliance also. For example, when you create a RDS database, at the end of the day, it's going to store all your data in the file system. It's going to use specifically a service called as EBS, Elastic Block Store. It will attach the Elastic Block Store file system to this database and will store all the data there. For example, if someone got access to this EBS volume, and if they try to read the data from here, it is possible to know what are the data available in your database. Okay, so that is a security issue. So in this case, what we'll use is we'll do a concept called as encryption at rest. Rest means the data is stored in some place, that is called as rest. So we'll encrypt the data using a service called as KMS. KMS stands for Key Management Service. That is again a managed service by AWS. Okay, so we'll encrypt the data using the KMS, and we'll make sure that only this RDS has the access to decrypt the data. So even if this EBS volume is compromised, and someone got access to this EBS volume, they can't read the data because they won't be having access to this KMS keys. Okay, so that is the idea. Maybe like because we are here, there is one more concept called as encryption at transit. So this is again like asked in most of the interviews, and when you are designing a system, this is something which you should keep in mind. Encryption at transit is nothing but when you pass the data over the web or somewhere, like how you can make sure like it is encrypted. For example, in case of web, we saw how to encrypt the data using HTTPS. So it will encrypt the data at the client side, and on the server side, the keys will be there to decrypt the data. So even if someone reads the data at the transit, they can't understand the data because it's an encrypted format. Okay, so that is called as encryption at rest at transit. And encryption at rest is what will happen if your EBS volume got compromised. Okay, so we'll always like make sure when designing the system, like both in transit and at rest, the data is secure. So that is the objective. I think this is cool. Like we discussed the important concepts. Now we'll get into a demo and see how to configure all these things. Cool. So once you are inside the AWS console, go to RDS. And I assume like you started using your IAM user, not the root user. If you still use the root user, please create an IAM user and start using the IAM user with administrator access. Okay. Cool. So this is a home page for RDS. So there are different type of database. I forgot to mention that. RDS takes care of relational database only, but there are like other databases like DynamoDB, Cassandra. So different other database. Maybe like we'll see those databases in the different section. So I'll go to DB instance. Okay. So there is like already one database instance which is running. If you remember, it's called an instance. Okay. So I'll create a new database instance. I want to create it in a standard mode so I can show you all the options. I'll choose Postgres as the database. Here I'll choose the engine version. Okay. So if you remember, engine is nothing but what is the type of database we are going to, whether it's going to be a Postgres or it's going to be MySQL, MariaDB or whatever it is. Here it is a version of Postgres. I'll use a 16.1.R2 itself. Okay. And the templates. So for example, if I say production template, by default, it will come with multi-AZ cluster mode. Okay. So this is a multi-AZ cluster, which means it will have two readable standby DB instances. And then it can serve the read workloads also. But if it's a multi-AZ DB instance, it doesn't support the read workloads. Okay. But in this case, we want to go with free tier. So I'll choose this, which is a single DB instance with no standby DB instances. Okay. But this is the power of RDS. Okay. So if you want to create a multi-AZ instance, it is nothing but just checking, choosing this radio button instead of single DB radio button. That's it. So the database identifier name is learn AWS in 30 days. Okay. And the master username is Postgres. And there are ways to manage secrets using Secret Manager, which we will see in one of the sections later. But this time we are just going to give the username and password directly. Cool. So these are the different type of instance classes which is supported. For example, we already saw the instance types in EC2 lecture, which is in day 1. For example, you can have a standard standard classes. This is like M class, which is a general purpose instance, or you can have R and X class, which are memory optimized instances. In this case, for free tier, only burstable classes are available, which is a T class. We are fine with the T3 micro. This is a storage type. We are fine with general purpose SSD. Volume with 20 GB is fine. Don't connect to EC2 compute resource. This is also fine. Like we want to access this from the outside world. VPCs are also fine. We want to have a public access, so I can access the database from my local. Okay. But based on your security restrictions, if this is going to be a production application, you don't want to give public access. You want to give access only to the VPC only access. Okay. I'll just choose existing VPC, which is default. This is also fine. And all these things should be good. We go to additional configuration, port is this is also fine. For authentication, I'll use a database username and password authentication. Monitoring is also good, so we can see how the database is being used. Cool. And yeah, if we go into this, the initial database could be like learn AWS in 30 days. Okay, this is my first initial database to be available. Parameter is fine. If you want to change some of the configurations, you can use this parameter, but in this case, default is fine. Enable automated backups. So this is what we mentioned. So like it's as simple as making checking this box, so that like automatic backups will start happening. But in this case, we don't want to have the automated backups. But if it's your database, you have to ensure like there is a periodic backup which will happen. You should either use cron job and then store it in some place and things like that. But because it's a managed database, it's very simple for us to set this up. Enable encryption. This is what the encryption at rest is, and we are going to use the KMS key to do the encryption. And if we want, we can export the Postgres logs to CloudWatch also. Minor version upgrade is fine. Like it'll keep updating the version of database based on the availability, which is also fine for us. Okay, so yeah, we'll come to the last part. Like even though like they say it's a estimated monthly cost is $21, we are not going to pay $21 because it's part of the free tier itself. Okay, so create the database. Cool. So the database is getting created, and it will take some time to create the database. So what I'll do is I'll just show you the existing database which I already created before. So this is how the database looks like once you create this one, and once it got provisioned successfully. You will get something called as endpoint. This endpoint is a connection URL which you'll be using in your application, or which you'll be using from the command line now. And you can see it follows a similar pattern. It has a security group with the inbound ruled allow from any IP address. Okay, so that's how like we can come from a local also. All these things looks good. Okay, now if we go to monitoring, you can see a few parameters. Bustable balance it's because we use the T-type machine, so we got the bustable balance also. So if you remember from that lecture, bustable is nothing but like you'll accumulate the credits for not using the instance. Okay, so for example, the burst balance will gradually increase, and in case of sudden unexpected load or spike in traffic, this bustable balance will be used, and then it can increase the CPU and other resources for that short span of time. For example, you could have configured data like having one virtual CPU, but because we have burstable balance, it can go to up to 3 virtual CPUs and use that CPUs and come back to the normal level again. So it's very helpful in case of traffic spikes. Okay, but in this case, burstable balance is like 100%. CPU credit balance is also increasing, and then CPU utilization. So like initially it was 20%, but now it's around like 3%. Number of connections is also like one connection, and then like it gone down. Load is also like very minimal. Cool. These are the metrics which you will get by default in RDS, and we can see the logs and the things like that also here. Like what are the error logs, and that is the log rotation also enabled. So that's why like you see like multiple log entries here. And maintenance and backup, so we can check the maintenance and backup also when the maintenance window starts, and where the backups will be stored, and all those things can be seen here. Cool. I think like this looks good. Now I'll just connect to this database. So if you want to access this database from your local, make sure you allow the public access, publicly accessible option enabled. Okay. Yeah, I'll just exit from here. So I'm using a service called PGCLI. So this is a very good utility. You can find this for different OS. So I'm using Mac, so I can go here and install it using Mac. But if you have Linux, or if you have Windows, it should be available for all the OS. I'll say -h, and this is my host URL. I say -u, Postgres, and Postgres. Cool. So now we are into the database server. Okay, and this PGCLA has some commands like /list. It will list down all the databases. You can see the default database which created learn AWS in 30 days is available for us. And apart from that, there are few other databases as well. So what I'll do is I'll connect to learn AWS in 30 days. I'll say like /dt, which is like to show the tables available. So there is one table which is called users. Okay, maybe I can create one more table. Create a table in the public schema, and the table could be employees. Name can be varchar, and maybe agent, and department can be varchar. I think this is a very simple database just to show you like how things will be. And I can do a insert into public.employees age department values are nothing but Prasanna. Okay, cool. So I can do select start from employees. So you can do all these operations here. And if you have this connection URL, you can connect it to the application also, and it should work in the same way. But just be mindful when you're giving public access. As I mentioned, like you should not give public access always. Try to restrict it within the VPC for production applications. So we are going to see a demo application later, which will follow all this best practice and give access only to the server alone. So we'll see all those things later. But this is like this is a quick demo which I want to show you, and yeah, this is about the RDS also. Cool then. So if you have any questions again, like please let me know in the comments, and please let me know your thoughts also on the approach which I'm following, and whether it's useful to you or not. Please let me know in the comments. Yeah, happy learning. Bye bye.